Hi, everyone. My name is Rafi Cantor. I'm the member of the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council. I am the Melrose area rep there. I'm also a member of the Outreach Committee, and I'm chairing this portion of the evening for the Greater Wilshire, on behalf of the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council. We also have some wonderful partners in Echo Park. I wanted to shout out Mansour Khan, who's, I think, outside maybe checking people in, but he's been wonderful. And I also wanted to shout out April Hannon and Charlie Datry, who could not be here from the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council. So thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about what the format of the evening is before I introduce our wonderful moderator. So this is a production of a joint venture of two neighborhood councils, essentially. We are city components of our LA city government. And as such, we will be completing this forum tonight in manners that allow every candidate equal opportunity to speak, equal questions, equal time. So we will have opening statement, we will have some long form questions, and then we will have a closing statement. Each of these will be 2 minutes. There will be no rebuttals, and everyone will be getting the same question. At this time, I also want to remind the candidates to please speak into your microphone. We have a bunch of people on Zoom at home. If everyone can wave, they're in the back right now or right here. They can only hear you if you talk into the microphone. I just also want to let the candidates know that we will have a timer that will be going off on here, which is very inconvenient for you. So we have someone at the back who's going to be holding up, that's Juan. Everyone say hi to Juan. Juan will be holding up a laptop when you have 30 seconds remaining, and you should be able to see the timer there. The last thing that I'll say is that the order tonight done, the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, which operates neighborhood councils, asked that you choose an order in a way that is fair to everyone. So we have just done something simple. It is last name alphabetical order. And basically every question, that order will skip one person. So the first question, the opening statements will begin with Al Corrado, and then it'll work their way down. For the next question, Steve Johnson will be first and Al will be last. And then it'll go in that manner until we finish. This is my last thing. I want please ask everyone to hold their applause until the end. Again, we want to do this in the interest of equality for everyone for this, everyone getting the same amount of time, same questions. Please hold your applause until the end, except for right now when I introduce our wonderful moderator. She is the president of the eBell, where we are all sitting right now, our wonderful host for tonight. She's also the editor of our local publication, the Larchmont Buzz. Please welcome Patricia Lombard.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure. I'm Patty Lombard, and I get to wear two hats tonight. It's my pleasure to welcome you. I guess I better read with my glasses. The Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council and the Echo Park Council CD13 Candidate Forum, and congratulations to the organizers. This is no easy feat. Tonight, I'm honored to wear two hats. One, the co-publisher of the Larchmont Buzz. We deliver local accurate news online every day for the past 10 years. I'm joined by my co-publisher, who's going to kill me for singling her out, but Liz Fuller is here, and Liz has spent hundreds of hours. She's back there. You can read all of our coverage on the local races on the June 7th ballot. All of her stories can be found on the Buzz. I am also here as the volunteer president of the eBell of Los Angeles. We are a women's club. We were founded in 1894 at a time when women did not have the right to vote. And we never, ever take that right for granted. And we remain dedicated to our mission of being a women-centered, women-led arts and cultural campus that serves all of Los Angeles. And we welcome new members. I just want to take a moment to thank the eBell staff for their hard work. We have a lot going on here tonight, and they make it happen safely and securely, and we appreciate your cooperation with our staff. We are so excited to have so much happening here. And I also want to thank all of the candidates for participating and the neighborhood leaders who work so hard to bring this public forum to you as a public service. And most importantly, I want to thank all of you for coming in person and for those joining us on Zoom. It is truly encouraging to see so many of my fellow citizens involved in this election. So now what I get to do is give you just a tiny bit of information. This is the commercial for getting involved in your local neighborhood council. And I was a neighborhood council member at one time. We are unpaid elected stakeholders. Sort of feels like, oh, great, you get the best of both worlds. You're elected and you're unpaid. We have the closest community tie to City Hall, and we are responsible for acting as liaisons between constituents. City Hall, there's a small annual budget. Liz just wrote a story yesterday about neighborhood purpose grants, and those are something that each city council, each neighborhood council makes available. They can also take official positions on important issues that confront the city council. They are non-binding recommendations, and they are very much an opportunity for you to get involved. You're here tonight, so I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. What is the city council? The city council is LA's primary legislative body. There are 15 members. They are up on alternating terms this year. The odd districts are up for re-election and election, and the next round will be the even. I never knew that until this year. And they each represent about 250,000 people. They make adjustments to finalize the city budgets, and they are responsible for levying taxes, traffic regulations, authorizing public improvements, all the things that really matter in our daily quality of life. So if you haven't already filled out your ballot, the election is June 7th. You should have received a ballot in the mail. We have vote centers. You can drop your ballot off there, and you can even sign up to get a reminder that, or you can track your ballot, which is super exciting. There are 31 races on the ballot. You can go to a vote center or you can drop your ballot off. Either one. Let's see, which races will go to a runoff? Okay, so if the city and county races, you need 50%, if any candidate gets more than 50% of the vote, then there's no runoff. If no one does, then there will be quote unquote a runoff with the top two vote getters facing each other in the fall. All statewide races go to the top two, and the top two simply means the top two vote getters regardless of affiliation. Okay, so I think I got that out of the way. And I wanted to also now go to the opening statements. And let's see, I guess we'll each give you 2 minutes. I almost said 20. That would really
I can fill it. I can fill it, I promise.
Sure. Well, you get to go first. So go ahead, Albert.
Hi, everyone. My name's Albert Corrado. I'm a native Angelino. I'm the son of immigrants. My mom came over here from Mexico. My dad from El Salvador. My dad is still in construction. My mom used to clean houses growing up. So me being here is kind of weird to me because I never paid attention to politics growing up because it just wasn't something that my parents cared about, because all they cared about was survival. And they were living in a city that, you know, back then in the 80s and 90s was very hard for immigrants as it is today. I never thought I would be up here saying I'm a candidate for city council, that, you know, talking like a candidate does, but sometimes life kind of forces you in another direction. And in July of 2018, my sister Melly was killed at the Silver Lake Trader Joe's by LAPD. I was living in Minneapolis when that happened, and I came back to Los Angeles, decided to get involved in my community. I saw the city and how it handled my sister's murder at the hands of the LAPD. They basically said that the police did nothing wrong, that that's the price you pay for a functioning police department. And that wasn't good enough for me. We sued the city, and I knew that that was going to take a long time. So I decided to get involved in my community. I started an organization called People City Council with some of my friends, and we raised $2 million to give to local organizations like Black Lives Matter LA, National Lawyers Guild, and many, many others. I'm an abolitionist. I don't believe that police should ever be a thing. I want to get rid of the LAPD. I've been very, very staunch about that from the beginning of my campaign, and I have not backed down. If people think that that's not a viable thing, I'm here to tell you that it is, because I see them standing over there. Look at that. That right there is they're wasting our money. They're wasting our time. Look at that. That right there is hundreds of dollars just going to waste. So I'm not here to fuck around. I'm here to talk to you about what's going on in the city. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So Steve Johnson.
Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. So good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council as well as the Echo Park Neighborhood Council for hosting this, as well as Patty Lombard from Larchmont Buzz. Super excited to be here. For me, it's about clean, safe neighborhoods, not just for a few people, but for everybody. So when elected, I'm going to make LA cleaner and safer. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Steve Johnson. I am an Air Force captain, or former Air Force captain, rather. Currently, I serve on the LA County Sheriff's Department as a sergeant, and I'm also a proud gay Black man. When my husband and I, there's Brian right there. When my husband and I moved to LA more than 25 years ago, we fell in love with the city. It's a city we love, and we've been able to pursue our dreams. We also adopted our rescue dog, Quinn, who seems to get more attention than I do. But anyway, when you look around the city, you have to ask yourself, have things gotten better or worse? Recently, several city council members were federally indicted for taking illegal contributions. So if quid pro quo is the order down at City Hall, is it any wonder that we have no affordable housing? Is it any wonder that we have the largest homeless population, arguably, in the country? I don't think homelessness is a crime, but I also don't think leaving people on the streets to die is very compassionate either. And when you talk about crime, in certain parts of CD13, crime is up over 140%, and that's unacceptable. Why am I the best candidate? 3 reasons. Number 1, my whole life has been dedicated to ethical leadership. Number 2, of all the candidates here, I have the most experience dealing with our unhoused neighbors, contacting literally thousands of them at the street level. And number 3, as a peace officer, I've served this area, so I know exactly what we need to make our community safe and improve the quality of life. I look forward to sharing my vision with all of you about how we can improve LA and make it the greatest city to live, work, and raise a family. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Councilmember Mitchell Farrell.
Thank you, Patty. Good evening, everyone. It's just really great to be here tonight. I also want to thank the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council and the Echo Park Neighborhood Council. I was active in my community long before I ever entered into public service. I've been vested in the 13th District for 40 years. I was raised with a very humble background in Oklahoma, where I grew up, where my father was a Teamster and a truck driver, and we faced eviction many times in my childhood. My mother is a Native American, as am I. Very proud of that heritage. I'm also a member of the LGBTQ community, very proud and out with that heritage as well. Many years ago, I entered into public service under the office of my predecessor, and I did several jobs within that, working in that office. By the time 2013 rolled around, I ran for the seat, and I was successful and was reelected again in 2017. Leadership is not easy. It means you're willing to take chances and willing to take risks and willing to be criticized for being a leader and standing up for what you believe. We've done that since taking office. My leadership has resulted in over 4,000 units of covenant affordable housing and permanent supportive housing for the unhoused since 2013. My leadership has resulted in the strongest renter protections during the pandemic of any city in the United States, including an eviction moratorium. My leadership has resulted in so many benefits for the 13th District, but I always feel like I'm just getting started. We are looking to the future. We are looking for a completely renewable energy future, carbon-free by 2035. And as chair of the Environmental Committee, I'm leading the city in that imperative. Thank you so much. It's great to be with all of you tonight.
Thank you. Kate Pinus.
Hi, thank you so much for putting this together. Thank you,
It's-
Patty.
It's
Yes.
awkwardly close. You're in the right spot.
Okay, great. Thank you. In this moment of crisis in our country, when so many leaders are failing and, children are being murdered, I am just so grateful that I am in a community that cares so much. So thank you so much for being here tonight and for being part of the solution. I'm Kate Pinus. I am a 3rd-generation Angelino. I'm a lawyer. For the last few years, I was working in City Hall as a policy advisor on homelessness and the environment. And from the moment I got into that building, I was like, wow, this place is screwed up. No wonder we have the problems that we do. And there were a couple of moments where it was really crystallized how badly we needed new leadership right here in Council District 13. And one of those was when the current council member went into Echo Park and sent in 750 police officers and wasted $2 million to clear an encampment that should never have been there in the first place. And now, a year later, only 13 of those people are housed. That's a failure. But we know that we can do better. We know what works. I was part of a team over on the west side that helped 200 people off the street, and now 90 of them are in permanent housing. And so if we want a city that is affordable and is safe and is livable for everyone, we need leadership that is imaginative and progressive and has experience. And that's who I believe I am. So I'm just so looking forward to the questions tonight. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Kate. Hugo Soto Martinez.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you for the neighborhood councils for putting this together. I served on a neighborhood council, so it's all volunteer work. You got the good and the bad, but thank you for organizing and putting this together. I've been an organizer for 15 years. I started working, so my parents were street vendors growing up in this city. And when I was 14 years old, my dad sustained a back injury that left him disabled for life. I started working at a non-union hotel when I was 16 years old, and I worked that job through high school and through college. 6 weeks, as I'm still a student, the union came into my workplace. I dropped going to law school, and I helped bring the union into my workplace. The guaranteed workers good wages, health insurance, a pension, and most importantly, the ability to fight any disrespect in the spot. I've traveled the country. My last political campaign was being flown to Georgia to lead a field office in Lithonia when we flipped the state, and we won for Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. But I come back here, and one of the things that happens a couple months later is Echo Park Lake. And that was one of the last transgressions that have happened in this district. Because under this current leadership, this district has lost 12,000 people due to displacement and gentrification. Under this current leadership, over 1,500 units have been destroyed because of Ellis evictions and demolitions, and no protections have been put in place. Under this current leadership, people have been left to die and pushed around the street using violent sweeps that don't solve the root of homelessness, but rather move people around the district. I have been around the country getting rid of these elements. I was in Arizona in 2016 when we got rid of Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Those elements that I have fought to change and implement new leadership, they exist here in our city. And so the same energy that I have taken to improve the quality of life of workers and residents across the country, it's what we're going to do in CD13. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go out to the first question. Each candidate will have 2 minutes. And this one deals with housing and historic neighborhoods. The question is, 64% of the city's residents are renters, and the cost of rent keeps increasing. How do you plan to increase the number of available affordable units in the city while protecting historic neighborhoods? And Steve, you'll be the first one.
Thank you. So yes, we are in a severe point in our city where there's virtually no affordable housing. There isn't really there's not a supply that on all levels. So with regard to that, I think that simply increasing the threshold of low income houses in builds a small percentage can soften that and make it more available. With regard to preservation, I am a preservationist. I think we need to, as I've knocked on over 4,000 doors in the city, and a lot of people, it is a concern. People can barely afford their rent, but people that are getting moved out, we're finding different types of builder coming into the neighborhood that are not consistent with the culture of the neighborhood. So I am a preservationist with that. So with regard to that, I think when we work the purview of supplying affordable housing is within the council members' duties. So with regard to that, I think when we have people develop, we need to have developers respect the neighborhood in which they build, not just make it an urban plain blank slate of 100 units. So we need to make sure that those developers give them incentives to make sure that the neighborhoods have, maintain the integrity and the culture of the neighborhood, because we definitely don't want to have it to where we just have buildings and buildings of just, ugly structures that are house people. So those are some of the solutions that I have. And when elected, I will definitely make a supply of housing my priority. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Farrell.
Thank you, Patty. Historic preservation and the city as it evolves are not mutually exclusive principles. Since being in office since 2013, we have historically preserved 27 structures in the 13th district. We know that Windsor Square, Spalding Square, Sunset Square, Melrose Hill, HPOZs, I feel very protective of those. We do not need to sacrifice our history or our built environment with what makes our environment so special and unique for the sake of moving forward into the future. I have focused on infill development since taking office in 2013. As I mentioned earlier, over 4,000 units of affordable, low-income, and permanent supportive housing since taking office. A lot of the projects that you see where I get accused of building only luxury housing, that's a myth. It's mixed income housing where we have as low as $400 a month rent for a studio in a covenanted 30% AMI unit. So we do not have to sacrifice what's so special. Just take a look at what we've done in some of our neighborhoods. As I mentioned, I feel very protective of these historic neighborhoods in the city of LA, and they are the example to look to the future, and we need more of them. I would love to work with Larchmont Village. I know that you have been working in pre-pandemic years of creating an HPOZ. It's a little harder with SB 9. Let's not kid ourselves. SB 9 is not something that I supported. That does nothing to produce the inventory of covenanted affordable housing. We have a lot of work to do, but we have plenty of infill development opportunities. And I feel like moving into the future, we can produce a lot more. If all other council districts did what we did, we'd have over 60,000 units of covenanted affordable housing. But outside of downtown Los Angeles, we produce more than anywhere else.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to Kate.
Thank you. The reason we have the affordable housing crisis that we do is because we lack 500,000 units in Los Angeles just for the people who live here right now. And 200,000 of those must be reserved for low-income Angelenos. And all of that everyone needs to be able to afford to live in Los Angeles. You know, I saw a very startling statistic the other day, which is that to afford the average apartment in Los Angeles, average rent, you need to make $94,000 a year. That's crazy. That is why we have hundreds of thousands of people paying over 50% of their income in rent every month. So we need to do better. We need to speed up building housing by doing things like making it easier to convert office buildings into housing. We need to expand the transit-oriented communities program, which has been a success in building those affordable units. Many of those affordable units that Councilmember O'Farrell mentioned, actually, those were produced by transit-oriented communities that was actually, because the voters put that on the ballot. So we need to expand that program. We also need to make sure that we are prioritizing, speeding up the process of building affordable housing and protecting the affordable housing that already exists. We need to enforce our tenant protections and make them even stronger. That's a big reason why we have the homelessness crisis that we do. And we need to make it easier to find those units. And I don't think that that's incompatible with the historic preservation that we're talking about. In some ways, in some communities, we could actually require what a community could look like, what a duplex might look like. I'm fine with that. If that's what's going to get us to build more housing, we can say what they need to look like, while also preserving the housing that already exists. So thank you so much.
Okay, go.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a great question because this is not what's happening in the district right now. We see the Amoeba building has been destroyed or will be destroyed. The church in Silver Lake is set for demolition, and Taix is also set to be developed. So we're not doing that right now. And the truth is that it's not going to happen because over 50% of the donations from recurrent incumbent come from developers. Simple as that. Now, the way we build more affordable units is we have to invest in it. Washington, D.C. is a city that has a budget has a city is a fraction of us, yet they invest over 4 times the amount from their general fund to subsidize affordable housing. I'm a big fan of the United to House LA initiative that's going to put a total of $8 billion over the next 10 years to subsidize the cost of affordable housing because it's expensive to build in Los Angeles. It's extremely expensive. And even the current planning department has said, now the current incumbent says he's done 4,000. It was 2,000 a few months ago. But I think the actual number is 2,000. But even the planning department says that we need to build 23,000 affordable housing units per year, the equivalent of 1,500 per district. 2,000 in 10 years, it's not something to be proud of. But the council members have access to this data. They work with planning every single time. We haven't arrived at this point overnight. It's been decision after decision after decision. If we are going to build affordable housing, we simply have to invest in it. And so I think the United to House is a good step, but we also have to take money from our general fund and put it into those subsidies. And so that's one thing I will lead on.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay,
I guess since everybody's standing, I shall stand too. This is a good question because this kind of ties in with the answer to homelessness and how we're going to house so many people. The thing is that affordable units already exist in our city. They're being hoarded by corporate landlords. Right now, we have a city council that this man sits on that is bought and sold by developers. So when anything gets built, they say, you know what, in this 100-unit complex, we're going to give you 10 units of affordable housing, and who the fuck knows what affordable means? It means 10 different things to 10 different people. So to me, we need to use what is already being hoarded. We need to be hostile to corporate landlords and actually open up these empty units to house people, because we're not going to build ourselves out of this crisis. If let's say every complex that goes up has 10 affordable units, how many do we need to build to get the amount of affordable units? It does not exist. That LA does not exist. So we need to actually use the powers that fall under the purview of city council and say, hey, you know what? We're going to work with you. We're going to help you house people, because that way it takes care of the homelessness problem, and it takes care of the problem of affordable housing. As far as historic preservation, I'm all for that. If we use the empty units that are in the city right now, we don't have to touch historical sites. LA loves to turn its back on its history all the damn time. Okay, we want to knock stuff over, and we want to put something like the Academy Museum, which I think it's a fun museum, but it's a simulacrum of an art museum that doesn't mean anything to anybody. We love to put something new in and call it historical and say, this is important to our city. And I want to actually preserve the things that need to be preserved. And trust me, if we are housing people using existing units, we're not going to have to knock anything down. So all the nice houses, all the historical stuff will stay, but we need to actually start being hostile to people who are hoarding resources right now, who have giant high rises that have an encampment underneath it and don't care about the people in that encampment.
Okay, just a point of fact. The Academy Museum is a adaptive reuse of the May company.
Do you know who is the guy who runs it though, or like who donated a bunch of money?
You know what? I don't want to take away from your time. I just wanted to make sure.
Probably a friend of yours, I'm sure.
No, people that there were no houses destroyed to build the Academy Museum.
That's not what I said, but.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Move on.
Never mind. Okay, my apologies.
You're driving.
All right. Okay, so the next question is homelessness. Under what circumstances would you act to remove an encampment in District 13, and how would that removal be executed? And it's your turn, Councilmember Farrell.
So about 6 weeks ago, on Selma in Hollywood, right around the YMCA at Selma and Wilcox, we housed 31 people, and those encampments had really gathered and formed during the pandemic and had really inhumane conditions that people were living in. There was very serious mental health issues and very serious drug addiction issues in that encampment, and people just who needed a place to go. So through our Bridge home site, through my incredible office that spends half of its time on dealing with homelessness, we brought 31 people indoors, and we have several housing solutions. We have the tiny home village on Alvarado, where some of those folks now are. or a tiny home village on 3rd Street, another tiny home village underway soon in historic Filipino town. It's all about having places for people to go. That's how we housed 31 people a couple of months ago. And the sidewalks are free and clear and accessible all the way. And the park, Selma Park, is now safe, clean, and secured every night. Today was the anniversary of reopening Echo Park Lake. It has been free, safe, clean, secure, with 0 crime for 1 year now. And how we achieve that.
Okay, thank you.
And
Please.
And
Okay,
so here's how we achieve that.
let's let him finish, and then everyone else can
Could I
respond.
get my 30 seconds? Could I get my 30 seconds back? 30
Sure.
seconds.
Please,
All right.
we really need
Mitch,
you.
get your thugs in order, dude. Come on.
Please. We
So-
really need you to respect the rules so everyone can speak. Okay,
The disruption happened at 30 seconds. So what we did was, for the better part of a year, my office, working with LASA, working with agencies, stood up 200 units of housing. We bought a building in Echo Park through Project Home Key. For over 3 months, we had the most successful placement operation in the city's history. We had a place for everyone to go, and there was 0 interaction with the police and the encampments in the lake. We had everything going for their belongings. We brought them indoors, and today we celebrated 1 year of a safe, open, clean park. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, now. Okay, so Kate, you're up next. Same question. Under what circumstances would you act to remove an encampment in District 13, and how would that removal be executed?
Thank you. This is the #1 issue that anyone brings up when I go and knock on doors. We have 40,000 people who sleep on our streets every night, and that is traumatic for the people who are unhoused. And it's really deeply disturbing for people who are housed. And the truth is that, less than 10% of the people who were in Echo Park got housed. A year later, that is a failure. What we need to be doing is housing people. And here's how we do it. The work that I was a part of in Venice, we did concentrated outreach with an amazing service organization that did trauma-informed outreach to the individuals who were on the beach, and found out exactly what their needs were, whether that was a mental health needs, and were able to pair that with the appropriate housing. We did significant coordination with our county partners every single day, and we're able to be transparent with the community and with the people who are unhoused. And there was no need for police involvement. And that's what we need to do across our communities. And right here in Council District 13, we need to take an all of the above approach, where we are making sure that we're being trauma informed, that we are providing that pathway to permanent housing, right? And then on top of that, we need to be making sure that we are keeping people housed. So that is the approach. And thank you for the question.
Okay, Hugo, thank you for your answer, Kate.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I'll say one way we're not going to do it is the way the current council member is doing it. And Echo Park Lake is an example of the largest failure in homeless policy in this city. And it is true, they're not at Echo Park Lake, but you know where they are at? They're in their Windsor Square Library. They're at Barnesdale Park. And they've been spread across all over the district. That's where the homeless community went. A UCLA report came out, damning report, everyone should read that. I'm not gonna go into it, I wanna answer your question, but it's not the way we're gonna do it. The way we're gonna do it is by not allowing the encampments to grow. Encampments don't all of a sudden pop up, it's 1 tent, it's 2 tents. The current council office doesn't have people exclusively dedicated to homelessness. According to the website, nobody is exclusively dedicated. I will staff a minimum of 4 people on my staff to work exclusively on homelessness, to answer your constituent calls, to do consistent outreach, to fight for grants, to work with service providers and not allow encampments to grow to that level. With that consistent outreach, we have to tie it with housing. We don't have enough housing for the homeless. That's why the city was sued. They only have 39% housing for the homeless population. We need to use the empty office spaces that we have, the empty hotels, and the empty hospitals. St. Vincent Hospital on 3rd Street in Alvarado has been sitting empty for 2 years. Why are we waiting for housing to be built? Let's use what we have now and buy that. The city, the mayor, and the council office both have power to use that empty space to house our neighbors. If we do that, consistent outreach, make our staff nimble, able to address the needs of the constituents, and where we're aggressive about using the empty spaces we have right now, we can have solutions that are much faster than we currently have right now.
Thank you very much. Okay, back to this end of the room, Albert.
Hello. So you know what? This is a good question because I'll be very frank. I would not remove any encampments because the way that this works is people don't just choose to become homeless, okay? I don't care what myth people want to say that people don't want housing, they want to live on the street. That's not true. And as Ugo said, you know, an encampment grows because it's one tent, it's two tents, because people are social animals. We want to be safe. We want to have, we want to have an encampment because we want to have a neighborhood. We want to have society. And yes, a row of tents is a neighborhood because those are homes. Those are what people have made their homes. And so to me, the city loves to blame the individual and say, you know what, we offered you housing and you decided not to take it. When the housing they offered is a carceral shelter that runs like a prison, that does not allow you to bring your pets or your significant other. It basically it operates like a prison. You cannot leave past a certain point. You cannot be there for certain hours of the day. So why would someone take that if living in their tent has more freedom, is relatively safe? Why would they go and give up some of their humanity? So the city loves to blame the individual and say, you know what, it's your fault that you're unhoused. And guess what? It's the city's fault that people become unhoused, whether that's stagnant wages, whether it's medical debt. It's so many things. It's not just mental health or addiction anymore. It goes far beyond that. So to me, I don't see an encampment as a failure of the people living in the encampment. I see it as a failure of the people in City Hall. And anyone in City Hall should be ashamed that there are so many encampments. And you know what? Of course, we don't want people living in a tent because that's not where people want to live. But they do that because it's out of desperation, because everyone has turned their backs on them. There are no safety nets in this city. There are no safety nets in the country. So to me, I say, unless you have permanent supportive housing ready, you do not move an encampment. And that's it, because we cannot just keep saying that these little incremental changes are good enough. If they're not humane, then don't take them. So I support any unhoused person who doesn't want to live in a carceral shelter.
Thank you. Steve Johnson?
Wow, there's been some interesting points made here. Just to piggyback on what was said earlier, it's actually illegal. If I own a building, you can't force a landowner to convert their property. That's actually illegal. And when we talk about re-envision, reimagine, those are great buzzwords, but we need to have leadership that actually has the will to address the problem. I've actually done outreach. I did outreach during the peak of COVID when a lot of the care teams weren't available to go out there. And unfortunately, I'm gonna bring up the elephant in the room, and I know some people are gonna disagree with me, but there's a significant portion of our unhoused neighbors who don't want housing. And I'll say that again, there's a significant portion of our neighbors who don't want housing. Why? Because as Al talked about, there's curfew, they can't bring their pets, they can't bring their contraband, and I totally get that, and I totally respect that. That's why our platform is based in safe campsites, which have been very successful in other districts. I don't know why we haven't done it in CD13, safe campsites. Give our unhoused neighbors a place to go. Why can't we build more tiny homes? We have so much money, which is being misappropriated right now. It's going to consultants, PowerPoint, booklets, and things like that. So why can't we use the money that we have to make those immediate solutions? Safe camps and tiny homes. That's something we could do today. This whole thing of building a supply of housing, hard structures to the tune of $500,000 per unit, that's crazy town. I mean, that's gonna take, I think someone talked about 10 or 20 years. Our team computes about 30 to 35 years. So we need to be more compassionate with our unhoused neighbors. If anyone, I don't think anyone up here has done outreach to the extent I have. The people who are unhoused, they distrust being moved, because why? Look what happened with Echo Park. You're displaced and then you're homeless again. So let's provide solutions. If the homeless, unhoused person is our customer from a business model, let's give them the solutions that they want. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to switch to the next question, which is, this one is dealing with policing. The city council just approved the city's $11 billion budget for next year. Of that, the largest portion is designated for LAPD at $3.15 billion. Do you feel this is an appropriate amount for LAPD's budget? Why or why not? And we're going to start off with Kate.
So this question, I get this question a lot, and fundamentally, it's really about public safety. It's about how do we make our community safer. And I hear this all the time from people. They don't feel safe in LA, and that is unacceptable. You know, some people don't feel safe because of the chaos they feel from the homelessness crisis. Other people don't feel safe because of certain increases in certain crimes. And other people don't feel safe in especially Black and brown communities. They don't feel safe because of the police themselves. And so, but everyone deserves to feel safe. So how do we do this? We need to take police out of the things that they are not good at doing, that they are not trained to do, and that we don't need them to do. We need, especially on mental health calls, you should be able to pick up the phone and within minutes have a mental health expert arrive. We don't need a police officer doing that. They're not good at that. We also need to take them out of traffic enforcement. We need to make our streets safer in other ways by actually physically making them safer. And then also other people can be doing that kind of traffic enforcement. We don't need police doing that. And so naturally, you know, the police budget will fall because we won't have police doing that work. At the same time, police then will be able to do the core of policing, of getting guns off the street and of solving major crime, which is what instead they should be doing. So we need to be taking police out of the things that they're not suited for, and so that we all are safer.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So the next question, so it's your turn, Hugo, to answer the next question about policing budget.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and again, this question is about the priorities of the city, is about policing, safety. So I grew up in South Central Los Angeles, and I went to UC Irvine. I studied criminology. So I know this subject very well. A lot of the discussions around public safety, as we all know, sometimes they begin at the academic world, and then eventually sometimes they make their way into the public discourse. That's what's happening right now. An academic subject is being put out in the public discourse. And what we're talking about is, how do we prevent crime? Because police officers, and they will admit, you can talk to them after this thing is over, they show up after it happens for the most part. Most of their time is doing welfare checks, traffic tickets, citations, doing reports. No offense to the police officers, but they have some of the most boring jobs. And they will say that. That's what I've studied. And so, and also they as Kate mentioned, they're not adequately trained to deal with mental health, addiction, de-escalation. People are going through suicide. We have systems across the country and even in the county that are more cost efficient. That's good for the taxpayers. Faster response times. That's good for the community. And when that person gets there, they're actually able to connect the person with the services that they need. Why are we trying that? We should be trying that in the city of Los Angeles. And that's what the discussion is about. Because having a police budget at $3.15 billion comes at the expense of something else. We shouldn't have to put $200 million to do street improvements. We all want speed bumps. We all want stop signs. We all want bike infrastructure, but that is coming at the expense of putting most of the money into the police budget. We can get more with the same amount of money and use the rest of the money to fund social programs that will prevent crime, infrastructure, and other things like that. But this is a good discussion. I know we're probably not going to hash it out today, but we think what's happening right now is a good discussion about public safety.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Albert, your turn.
Yeah, full offense to the police here. Go fuck yourselves, you pieces of shit. Anyway, sorry. I just had to, just kind of set the tone for this because, listen, the LAPD budget it should not exist. It raises every single year. The police say, you know what? Crazy, crime is up again, yet you gave us more money last year, but we need more money because crime is up. So if you're telling me that every single year the LAPD is going to come and say, we need more money, show your work. What is happening? Why is crime? Why is there always a crime wave? Why is there a string of robberies? Why is all these things happening if you are getting more money every single year? The police are funded as much as they've ever been funded. And yet somehow they're either very bad at their jobs, as I'm sure all of you are, or they're lying and stoking people's fear and using the propaganda from the media, from all forms of media that sort of take what police say as the gospel and say, you know what, you're right. There is a crime wave. We need more money. We need to be hard on crime. But if we use the money, $3.5 billion, $3.2 billion that the LAPD gets right now to fund our communities, to fund mental health services, to fund affordable housing, to fund every single thing you can think of, crime will drop because guess what? Crime is driven mostly by poverty. Everything else you can address at the level of someone's soul. But if we're talking about our powers as the state, we can use that money to do so much good, way more than the LAPD can ever say they've ever done. They killed a record amount of people in 2021. They killed my sister in 2018 and killed the friends and loved ones of people that I know years before that and years after. So to me, I look at this as an insult. We took the streets in 2020 to say that we had had enough. And this is what the city gives us. All these people with their performative kneels and all this bullshit. And what they give us is an increased police budget. So to me, we're being hostile to the cops. You're done. And where I come from, if you fuck up, you lose 2 teeth. So you're about to lose your entire fucking mouth.
Okay, I would really appreciate it. You could just be a little more respectful to everyone that's here.
I'll be respectful to the candidates on the stage, but not the cops. I'm sorry.
Okay, let's go on to Steve Johnson. It's your turn to respond to the question.
Thank you. So, wow. It's with regard to the budget, it's funny that people on this panel talk about they studied policing. It'd be great if you were a police officer. I doubt if you've ever done a ride along. That might solve a lot of your issues. But with regard to that, having actually worked in this environment, the morale is very low. And I get the arguments that are said, and there's valid points to be made, but I will say also that we are severely understaffed. When we cut the budget, City Council cut the budget a couple of years ago, about $200 million. What were the first programs to go? Gang task force and property crime. So guess what? Now we have smash and grab. We have, things of a catalytic converter, car theft. It's up. And these are things you can't deny. And my thing is, when you're dealing with a criminal element right now, it's extremely sophisticated. They're not knuckleheads. They use technology. So we need to counter that with funding. Yes, we need to train officers better. I've personally responded to mental health crisis with clinicians. We need to pay them more. We need to train our officers more. We're not social workers. Someone said we're not social workers. So cutting our budget isn't going to help us respond to crime better. And also, too, with regard to responding to mental health crises with clinicians, in addition to paying them more, it makes me very nervous that the council members having these men and women respond by themselves. Having been personally attacked by a mentally ill person, it switches at the drop of a hat. It can switch. So we can do that with a tandem response or some type of delayed response, but having men and women go out there by themselves makes me nervous. But I do agree that the budget I think the budget is appropriate. I think it should be a little bit more. I think we also we could do a service to our community by hiring more female officers, because female officers have a different response to escalation in domestic violence, which are some of the most dangerous crimes that we have. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Farrell.
Thank you. I have to hand it to Al. He was forthcoming in his answer. You heard it, but Kate and Hugo did not answer the question because all 3 of them took a pledge, no more cops, to never hire another police officer. Hugo is an abolitionist, just like Al is. The budget that we approved 2 weeks ago helps meet attrition. We also approved funding for the Circle program. That's the first pilot program, an unarmed response in Hollywood, unarmed calls for service that are nonviolent. And that's where our Urban Alchemy outreach practitioners have interacted nearly 300 times with people who are experiencing trauma or anxiety or some sort of episode and suffering from the effects of homelessness and trauma. That's nearly 300 times where an officer has not shown up and has been, no armed approach to someone experiencing homelessness. There's more money to expand that program because it's working and it's a good thing. And that way our officers can focus on making neighborhoods safer and deterring crime. Let's deter crime before it happens in the first place. And I will say this, we need more women on the police force. We need more LGBTQ. We need more representation. The police need to look like the people of the city of Los Angeles. And I also am a big believer in keeping all departments accountable, and that includes the police department. I led on most of the reform issues in the summer of 2020, de-escalation, better training practices. So you can do both. It's not either or. Violent crime is rising. We've got to get control of that. And you don't do that by defunding or abolishing the police.
Okay, now we're going to switch gears to transportation. In 2019, Mayor Garcetti introduced LA's own Green New Deal. This plan calls for Angelenos to drive 2,000 fewer miles annually by 2035. What transportation infrastructure do you believe CD13 needs to accomplish this goal? And we'll start with Hugo.
Thank you so much. So I am an avid cyclist. I also skateboard, and so I experience the city. I'm very proud of that, but it's also very dangerous. And folks that cycle in this community know that every time you go out there, you risk your life essentially. So in 2017 we passed the Mobility Plan 2035. It's an amazing plan. If folks are passionate about transportation, they should read that document. And one of the things that it said is how to make pedestrian infrastructure safer, cycle infrastructure. We haven't built a single foot of protected bike lanes in the district, even though it's slated for about 8 or 9 miles in the district. What we're really talking about is how do we make other modes of transportation more viable, whether you want to walk, whether you want to cycle, or do you want to take the bus transportation. And it's not only a transportation issue, but also an environmental issue. And so I'm a fan of fare-free transit in the city of Los Angeles. I think we need to push for that. I think we need to make robust bike and pedestrian infrastructure, fix our sidewalks. Folks that have mobility issues struggle experiencing the city. We need to do safe streets, make streets 100% pedestrian, build more pocket parks, things like that. And I took the pledge from Streets for All to use 25% of our city's infrastructure for this kind of mobility. But like most things that happen in City Hall, these votes happen and they're never implemented. This plan was voted on almost by all council members, but you know what the trick was? It wasn't enforceable. It was left to the discretion of each individual council member to implement it. And as a result of that, only 7% of the plan has been implemented. At this pace, it's going to take us another 83 years to get to that plan. It's a beautiful plan. So I would push very strongly for that and work with neighborhood groups that are doing the work. Sunset for All, it's a great example. They've done the outreach, they've done the studies. We should be empowering folks that are passionate about this and use the office to augment the work they're already doing.
Thank you. Okay, Albert?
Yeah, so transportation to me has always been a climate issue. And I think that in order to address it as far as the Green New Deal goes, we need to make public transit enticing for people. We need to make it free, first of all. I'm a very big advocate for making public transit completely free across the board, because we know that 90% of fares collected are used to enforce fares. And so it's a bad model. It serves no one, especially people who ride transportation here in Los Angeles. 60% of those people live below the poverty line. So making it free removes an incredible barrier that anyone can use it. But if we're talking about, this has to kind of tie in with safety too, because right now, it is basically a punishment to ride public transit in Los Angeles. It's not clean. It's not always safe. It's something that, the city claims to care about, but doesn't really put the money in there. I mean, if you look at the yearly budget, transportation gets maybe 3%. That's nothing compared to, again, what we see the police getting or any other department getting. If you are really going to be about public transportation, you need to actually fund it as if it's something that you really care about. And to me, we need protected bike lanes. We need to make it safer for cyclists. We also need to make it safer for people just walking down the street. We need to look at problem areas, problem intersections in the district and around the city, and actually make them safe. Because I mean, I felt like in 2019, there were so many reports of people being killed, pedestrians being killed by motorists. And to me, that's just like, at what point do we say that enough is enough? There's this thing, Vision Zero, where like, oh, if a bunch of things happen in this one intersection, you get a safe intersection. And to me, if one person gets hurt, one person dies, that's enough for us to act on. So I think that we need to flesh out public transit in a way that's never been seen. I mean, invest in buses, invest in trains, make it free, and make it so people get out of their cars, because adding one more lane to the freeway is not gonna work with reducing traffic. It's going to be getting people out of their cars and making public transportation a viable option and something that people will be proud and excited to ride on.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, it's just one of my favorite topics. Having worked, I patrolled the Red Line. I was a Red Line sergeant for several years, so it's something I'm well versed in. With regard to transportation, it's really amazing because it really does intersect every part of our city. All social economic incomes, ride transit. However, with regard to transit, public transportation, one thing that's not talked about here is the safety on transit. A lot of our unhoused neighbors actually live in the transit, and I can tell you from a fact that's true. So when we do this homeless count of, I think we had over 4,000 people, I think it's closer to 5,000 people, because a lot of people live on transit. They ride it from one end to the other, which is very smart because it's air conditioned in the summer and heated in the winter, and there's public safety on the transit. So we need to make public transportation safer. I've actually responded to murders, rapes, and homicides on the transit, and that's not okay. I mean, we need to provide incentives to make people feel safe to ride transit so that it is a viable option. And when we're dealing with public safety, with transportation, I think another area that's not discussed here is how we approach electric vehicles. When elected, what I'd like to do is make LA the #1 city to own an electric vehicle. Wouldn't that be amazing? When our city was, designing our infrastructure in the 40s and 50s, we actually had this growing, thriving, I think it was called the red car. We actually had a very workable transit system, but then, tire industry, different corporations took over and then made LA a car city. So a lot of it deals with mindset. We need to talk to the public educate them about why it's better to use public transit, other modes of getting to work and transiting about the city. Because when we do that shift, it's going to be a lot easier to shift into the new economy with electric cars, maybe more people riding transit. Thank you.
Mitch?
Part of this conversation is also the electrification of the city fleet and 100,000 chargers in the city of Los Angeles for electric vehicles by 2030. That's in my electric vehicle master plan, which passed unanimously on the city council last month. We are about to enter into an unprecedented period where we create the infrastructure across the city of Los Angeles to electrify private cars, private vehicles, and all public vehicles, including bus transit. That is on the way. It's an imperative, and it's part of our LA 100 master plan, the complete electrification and carbon-free future by 2035. So that's on the way, and that's going to create around 10,000 jobs, good-paying union jobs, as we transition to clean energy and electrification. On protected bicycle lanes, I want to commend Sunset for all the volunteers who have worked for years to create this plan. That's undergoing an engineering study, which would create protected bike lanes all along Sunset Boulevard, the spine of the 13th district, which would eventually connect with our Walk of Fame master plan, which also calls for protected bike lanes. Now that is a transit corridor for bicycles that I think is very exciting, and we will see within a number of years. So when that engineering study comes out, we're going to take a look at how we can make this a reality. It's something that I've always found very intriguing and necessary. When I was in Los Angeles 40 years ago, for 4 years, my only mode of transit in the early 80s was a bicycle or a bus. I know what public transit is like, and you've got to feel safe if you're going to get on a subway, and people don't feel safe on our red car system right now, and that's absolutely got to change.
Okay, thank you. Kate, what infrastructure do you think CD13 needs?
Keeps on getting hooked in my earrings.
Been there, done that.
Yes. So, you know, there's so much to talk about when we talk about public transportation and reimagining how we get around Los Angeles. I used to take the metro every day downtown to work, and I loved it. I'm a third generation Angelino, and I know a lot of Angelinos who don't take the metro or like how, you know, are curious about it. But honestly, that is the kind of transportation that we're going to need to improve and start using as we become a denser city and a more sustainable city. I would have loved to be able to, I live in Hollywood. I would have loved to be able to bike here today, right? It's not that far away. It's like 2.5 miles, and that would have been fantastic, but I would be very worried for my safety. So we need protected bike lanes, and we need them sooner than years away. We need, and not just protected bike lanes, we need bike lanes that are interconnected so you can get across the city. LA is flat and it's sunny, and it would be a fabulous place to be able to bike around. And we also, of course, need those bus lanes, and we need buses to speed up. That's a huge equity issue. But it's an equity issue, but it's also a climate issue. And, you know, just converting to electric vehicles, that is not enough. We are not going to meet our climate goals. And I know this is a controversial thing to say in a room of Angelinos, but we got to get out of our cars. And as we become a denser city, we need to be using these other modes of transportation. So I'll be prioritizing all of that.
Okay, great. Thank you all for those. All right, so this is going to be our last question, and then we're going to go into the closing statement round. So this one deals with renters in Echo Park. Echo Park is 70% renters. At some point, the city will declare an end to the COVID emergency, which will mean the end of the eviction protection for tens of thousands of residents of Los Angeles. If elected, what would be your vision for protecting the tenants that are at risk? And we're going to start with Albert.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I'm hoping that this doesn't come to it. I mean, I don't want the COVID, you know, I don't want this, I don't want it to be done, because I think that, you know, it's been good that people can't like be evicted, because if we're talking about homelessness so much, what makes people go on the street is being evicted. So to me, we have to do things like people's right to counsel. We need to guarantee people's right to counsel. We need to bolster up tenants unions. We need to actually go in and organize people to protect themselves from landlords. But also I'm a big believer in, we need to, as the city, take on landlords, corporate landlords or otherwise. I think that landlords get to fly under the radar and say, well, yeah, you know, I own a building and I'm just a hardworking person. But a lot of the time, these people are slumlords. They don't take care of their people. And especially if we're talking about someone who owns 5 or 6 buildings that they can just sweep under the radar, you know, fly under the radar and do all these horrible things. To me, we need to kind of, you know, go to the root of the problem and say, you know what, these people don't just get to fly by and say, you know what, you're one of the good ones or whatever. A landlord to me is my enemy just by definition, especially a corporate landlord. So I would say we need to go and bolster up people's rights to counsel, but we also need to figure out how to just stop from, you know, evictions are trauma, evictions are violence. And guess who, anybody want to take a guess who does the evictions here in Los Angeles? Sir with a hat. The sheriff's department, right? That is rife with gangs. So we're putting people in a dangerous position in that we're evicting them, sending them on the street, but we're also putting them in contact with gang members, people on the LA County Sheriff's Department. So to me, this is something that we need to address, because it's public safety, it's people's lives that we're playing with. And if we send a gang member to evict someone, we are putting the lives of that person in the hands of Alex Villanueva. And do we really want that, you know?
Okay. Next, Steve, would you like to take a shot at that question?
Yeah, so with regard to eviction and protecting tenants' rights, like I'm all for that. You know, the set to expire, I believe it's a year after the state of emergency is lifted. I do think that there's a significant portion that we need to address with people and tenants who maybe have taken advantage of those policies with regard to COVID. Because if you remember back, a lot of the protections are based in COVID, and we're actually hopefully coming out of that. And so I think we need to I'm all for protecting those rights, but we also we want to make sure people aren't taking advantage of that. And I said, I have knocked on 4,000 doors. And when I talk to a lot of our mom and pop renters, I mean, obviously, as has been talked about here, we think of the corporate entities that own property. And I don't think, I'm not too worried about those big guys and girls, but the mom and pop mom and pop property owners, so many of them are close to losing their own homes because they can't get their tenants moved or placed. So I don't think that's fair either, to own a property and then me lose my house because I can't, I'm living off of the rent of my tenant. So I definitely think we need to have balanced approaches to how we deal with renters and landlords. And yeah, thanks.
Okay, Mitch, would you talk a little bit about your vision for protecting tenants at risk?
So back in March of 2020, when the pandemic hit, I and several of my colleagues took a leadership role and enacted the strongest renter protections in the United States for renters affected by COVID-19 causing a hardship and loss of income, pegged to a loss of income because of the pandemic. Those protections are still in place. They will expire in April of 23, so in April of next year. The moratorium is still in place until then. We knew that eventually the moratorium would expire. We also knew that the loss of income was causing real problems for everyone. So we enacted in my district a $1 million fund subsidy for renters in the 13th. Nuri Martinez did the same thing in her district. We then combined efforts and used CARE dollars for a $102 million subsidy for renters across the city. We later tripled that amount, or doubled that amount rather, and helped well over 100,000 households in the city of Los Angeles. Now, the state followed. So the good news is that a lot of renters have had that level of assistance. So we are protected until April of 23. And again, the strongest renter protections in the United States. And it's pegged to loss of income due to the pandemic. My office works with renters all the time who might be treated unfairly by a landlord. We open cases every week. We've helped so many renters across through the years in the 13th district, and my office is always available. If you have an unfair situation as a renter, call us at 213-207-3015. I've been a renter most of my life, so I understand what that's like, and we're here to help. We're at your service.
Okay, Kate, your vision for protecting renters?
This is a massive issue. And if we talked about homelessness earlier, but the reason we have the homelessness crisis, as we touched on, is because of the housing, how unaffordable housing is. And a big piece of keeping people housed are those renter protections. The number one piece of legislation that I would introduce on day one of being in office is to create an office of tenant advocacy in the housing department, whose job it is to actually help people stay housed, to help people with those subsidies. Yes, it's nice that a council office can do it onesie, twosie. We need to do it on a massive scale as a whole city, and helping make sure that tenants are getting those subsidies and make sure that they know their rights and make sure that they are getting that advocacy. We also need to fully fund the right to counsel in eviction court. And that's why I support the Unite to House LA piece of legislation that's going to hopefully be on the ballot, because that would fully fund a right to counsel. I'd also like to mention that while, Councilmember O'Farrell talks about what he's done on renter protections, he voted against a full ban on evictions at the beginning of the pandemic, and that's unacceptable. It was a moment of crisis, and while And in that moment, no one should be burdened with paperwork. There should have been no evictions at that moment. So we have to do a much, much better job of protecting renters. And I have a whole housing plan on my website, gateforcouncil.la, that includes a big section on renter protections.
Okay, you go.
Yeah, this is a really massive issue, right? Before the eviction moratorium that came into place, 10 to 20,000 people were getting evicted every single month in the county of Los Angeles. Many of those folks would end up in the street. We have 600,000 people in the county of Los Angeles who are spending 90% of their income on rent. And we also have the largest undocumented population in the county, in the country. It's an important detail because folks who are undocumented do not receive a single penny of unemployment insurance. When folks were working from home, people who are undocumented were looking for 2-3 jobs to keep up with what was happening. All that is gonna blow up in our face the minute this eviction moratorium is over. And so that's a serious issue. We're concerned about homelessness. I think we haven't seen anything yet if this expires. So what I support is what didn't get passed in March of 2020, which Kate alluded to, and that's a full blanket on eviction moratorium. This was pushed by people doing the work, people who are advocates of this subject, because we know that some folks aren't able to prove a loss of income due to COVID. A lot of folks work under the table. A lot of folks work cash. They use a different name. That's the reality. That's the reality of Los Angeles County. So those folks who are already the most vulnerable in our county, in our city, are the ones that are going to slip through the cracks. And so that's one way we have to do. And I think the other ones folks mentioned too, I do agree with the right to counsel. We know that if you have an attorney defending you, more likelihood is it won't get away with violating your rights, and you can stay in your home. But also there's a lot we can do with the housing plans. I don't want to get too wonky, but the Hollywood Community Plan is being debated right now. We can add eviction protections in that plan, and we don't have to go through city council. The council member can do it right now, or I will do it when I go in December, because it's being debated and we should have those protections. We have full discretion over that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to go to closing statements. Everyone will have 2 minutes. And the question is sort of focused a little bit on what was the moment that you decided that you needed to run for office. And Albert, I think it's, well, actually, I'm sorry, it's Steve. You're the first one.
All right. Okay, so the aha moment for me when I decided to run for office was, as I said earlier, when I really started, I was working on neighborhood council as a homeless chair, and I didn't expect to be where I am now, but as I started to pay attention to what was going on locally, the fact that 3 of our council members were federally indicted, it shocked me, quite honestly. I was sickened, to be honest with you. And I talked to my neighbors about it, and they said, well, that's politics as usual. That's just how it is. But I'm like, no, that's not how it is. We need decent people at City Hall. We enough of career politicians, people, political operatives. We need real people at City Hall who actually care about protecting our community and keeping it safe. And with regard to running for this office, I'm honored. I'm honored to be here as representing my community. And when elected, you can rely on me to keep our neighborhood safe and clean. As I said earlier, when going into office is very difficult. It's going to be a difficult thing, but I'm up for the challenge. When we talk about all the things that are going on in our city, like I said earlier, I'm specifically versed in all of them, particularly homelessness and public safety. And my aha moment, like I said, it was truly well, one's in jail and two are going to jail, but that was really my aha moment. The government is broken at City Hall, and it's time to get real people there. So you have a choice. This is one of the most important elections, not just because I'm running or because we're up here on this panel. This is one of the most important elections of our lives. Not only federally do we have things going on with rights, women's rights and other things, which are going to ripple into everything, but also locally, we have a lot going on with our homeless crisis. So it's time to elect a leader who is going to do something, not a regular political operative or career politician. And I'm that person. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mitch? Yeah, closing statement and a little bit focused on this idea.
Thank you so
We were
much.
looking for something more personal.
Well, Patty, thank you. And again, thank you for the organizers tonight for volunteering your time. I've been a volunteer my whole life. In the late 1980s, I volunteered for Paws LA, and I would go around and I would collect animals, animal companions of homebound clients who were dying of AIDS. And I would take them to the vet and I would return them after they got the treatment they needed. In the early 90s, for 3 years, I volunteered for Project Angel Food. Every Monday was my route. That's how I got to know the 13th District so well, because I had clients all over the 13th, the hills of Echo Park, Silver Lake, Glassell Park, where I've lived for 30 years. I got to know the district very well. In the late 90s, for 3 years, I volunteered at the Wildlife Way Station. I took care of the exotic birds, all the while volunteering for my neighborhood in Glassell Park, where I live. And that's what got me into public service. So I started in the office of my predecessor back in 2002, and over 9-year period, 9 years and 4 months period, I was a deputy, I was district director, and then I was senior advisor. I am not a political operative. I am not a career politician. I never thought I would be in elective office. And this is the only job that I really ever want in elective office. We need experience to right this ship in the city, and I'm the guy to do that. My aha moment was toward the end of my predecessor's term, and a lot of the constituents that I'd worked with for over 9 years started inviting me to coffee or lunch all over the district. And the universal feeling was, Mitch, we want you to succeed your boss on the LA City Council. So I went for it. I feel obligated, I feel honored, I feel privileged, and I felt privileged then to run for this seat and become the elected official for 2 terms. And I humbly ask for a 3rd term because we're going to do so many incredible things moving forward, addressing the issues that we talked about today. I'm your guy, and I'm honored to serve. Thank you.
Okay, Kate, your aha moment.
I think it was really a series of aha moments, and we've touched on a number of them tonight. One of them was working on that full ban on evictions that the council member voted against. Another one was the moment that we saw 750 police officers descend on Echo Park and not solve anything. And other moments were more intimate. You know, I go out and I do outreach to my unhoused neighbors in Hollywood almost every weekend, and seeing so many moments of crisis. I remember this woman who just told me how tired she was. She just wanted to be inside. She was so tired of fighting the system. We are facing multiple crises in our city, from the homelessness crisis with 40,000 people sleeping on our streets every night, to the housing crisis where hundreds of thousands of people are paying over 50% of their income in rent every month, to our climate crisis, the existential threat of climate change. And the real question at this moment is Los Angeles headed in the right direction? And I think anyone looking around LA right now would say, absolutely not. So then the question is, who do we want in office? And I have I believe I have the imagination and the progressive values and the impatience, but also the experience to hit the ground running on day one, which is why the LA Times recently endorsed my campaign, because they saw that we can do all of that. So if you want someone who can hit the ground running on day one and represent your values, that's who I am. Thank you so much.
Okay, Ugo?
Yeah, I had 2 uh-oh moments and 1 aha moment.
Okay.
My first uh-oh moment was when the census data came out and it showed that 12,000 people had been pushed out of the district, which only confirmed what I had been seeing was gentrification and displacement. And the other uh-oh moment was Echo Park Lake, which the report confirmed everything we had seen that night. And my aha moment was, so I started an exploration with my community. This wasn't a decision I made on my own. I went with my community and I said, is this something that we could do? And as an organizer, you know, we beat powerful corporations. You look for a path to victory? Can we win? You're not going to do it just to do it. Can we have a path to victory? All of a sudden, that path was revealing itself. And I still was undecided. I said, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And I thought about it. I said, why? And it was very clear. It's the same thing that I do when I organize housekeepers to take on the boss, right? Tell housekeepers to risk their job to improve their lives. It's because of fear. I was afraid. And I thought to myself, well, I would never accept that from a housekeeper. You push people to push past their fears. And that's why I decided to run. That was my aha moment. My job is very fulfilling. I change people's lives. They get good health care, health insurance. They learn their own power. Being a public figure, a public face is not something I'm used to. But you have to tap into, and I sound cheesy, you got to tap into love. What is it that you love? We're fighting for something. We're fighting for community. We're fighting for the people that are being displaced. We're fighting for a better world. And reality is we're not acting with that kind of urgency. And, it's true, you need the kind of experience. If you think the council member has the experience that you like right now, go ahead and vote for him. If you want someone who has a broad coalition that's been endorsed by over 40 organizations and individuals and outraised the incumbent since we started the race, I'm your person. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, you get the last word, Albert.
Ooh, wow. How do I do this? So I think that a lot of people might think my aha moment was when my sister was killed by agents of the state, but it really wasn't, because I didn't know what city council did back then. I wasn't sure of how the city worked in concert with other parts of city government to protect the police. It took me some time to figure that out. But I think that, a name that kept popping up, and I love that Mitchell Farrell he says my predecessor, he used to work for Eric Garcetti, one of the worst mayors that the city has ever seen. So that's why he's not saying the name, just so you all know. But a name kept popping up when I was doing outreach, when I was going and organizing with people, when I was familiarizing myself with what was going on in the city. Mitchell Farrell. I said, who is this Mitchell Farrell? I live in his district. I don't know anything about him. Let me read up about him. And I saw all of the horrible things he was responsible for. I had personal relationships with people who live in Echo Park Lake, the unhoused people. And they said, you know what? We wrote a letter to Mitchell Farrell's office saying, hey, we want to work with your office. We want to get housing. We want humane solutions. And he left them on red. He didn't respond to them. He actually ended up making their lives even harder. So that was kind of an aha moment. But then when I told people, hey, I want to run for city council, they said, well, yeah, we'll think about it. Well, we want to run other people. We want to be strategic. And I realized this is a game to all of these people. This is a game to so many people. They want to get power. They want to be incremental about it and say, you know what? It's going to get a little better under me. And to me, I don't know how to play that game. I'm sitting on a stage with people who either want to increase police funding or keep it the same. And if you want to increase police funding, that means you're okay with more people dying. And if you want to keep it the same, that means you're okay with the current amount of people dying. That is what that says to me. It is a game to people. I do not play that game. I do not seek endorsements from Democratic clubs because they look good. I do what feels right. And to me, my sister's death was a very pivotal moment for me, but you created me, Mitch. So thank you so much for inspiring me to do this. I cannot wait to take you out. Love you, brother.
I want to thank all of you for listening. I want to thank all of our candidates for their heartfelt, thoughtful responses. And I hope everyone learned something tonight. I want to thank you for your patience and your consideration of each other, and a safe travel home.
Thank you to you.